The saga of Daniel Ricciardo is one that keeps surprising us at every turn. The recent developments suggest that leaving Racing Bulls won't be as simple as we once thought. The 8-time race victor seems to have firm support from the team's primary sponsors, Visa and Cash App, who are not ready to part ways with the Aussie just yet. This backing could have significant implications for Racing Bulls' future direction. Could these sponsors' preferences shape the entire fate of the team? And how will this affect Lawson's chances? The Singapore Grand Prix was a whirlwind of emotions for Ricciardo. After the race, he sat in his car longer than usual, absorbing every moment of being an F1 driver, possibly for the last time. In post-race interviews, he hinted at his uncertainty, saying he gave it his all, knowing this might be it. Team principal Laurent Mekies also acknowledged the significance of Ricciardo's fastest lap attempt, describing it as an honor to what might be his last career race. Even before the Singapore Grand Prix, rumors had circulated that Ricciardo's days with the team were numbered, with Lawson set to step in from the Austin race onwards. Marco had hinted at this change, suggesting an announcement right after the Singapore weekend. But now, a new twist comes from an unexpected quarter of the sponsors of Racing Bulls. To fully grasp this situation, it's essential to look at Visa and Cash App's influence on the team's direction. Before the rebranding from AlphaTauri, concerns about performance and lack of results raised fears of the team either being sold or facing bankruptcy. To secure their place in F1, Racing Bulls needed either top-tier drivers or substantial funding. When it became apparent that Dev wasn't meeting expectations, Ricciardo's arrival sparked hope. Initially, he was seen as the one to outperform Perez and impress enough to be a contender for a Red Bull seat. What many overlooked was how Ricciardo's market appeal was the key reason Visa and Cash App joined the sport, aiming to tap into the American market. Ricciardo wasn't just seen as a top-tier driver but as a marketing powerhouse. His presence opened doors for companies like Visa and Cash App, whose primary focus is the American market. These sponsors went as far as becoming Racing Bulls' title partners, injecting massive cash flow to keep the team afloat. This financial backing propelled Racing Bulls to where they stand now, 6th in the Constructors' Championship, a substantial leap from the previous year. However, these companies now face a dilemma: Ricciardo's possible replacement. According to Paddock insider Kim Illman, Visa and Cash App are reportedly blocking Ricciardo's exit, viewing the Aussie as a major asset to their business. This is the darker side of motorsport, where decisions often come down to business interests rather than pure racing talent. While Ricciardo hasn't met the team's performance benchmarks, like outperforming Tsunoda significantly, his commercial value remains a driving force. Having Visa and Cash App as his primary backers puts him in a position that few can challenge, even as Lawson showcases his potential. Visa and Cash App's involvement with Racing Bulls is purely business-oriented. While they respect Lawson's impressive performance, his lack of sponsor backing limits his entry into the team. This reality is hard for any driver without a commercial edge to navigate. Just glance at Lance Stroll's situation at Aston Martin. Having financial powerhouses behind you often overshadows raw talent. Ricciardo is far from being a paid driver, but his market value has certainly influenced Racing Bulls' direction. Even Yuki Tsunoda admitted that Ricciardo's feedback during difficult sessions is highly detailed and educational. Yet, despite Ricciardo's knowledge and contributions, the points tally doesn't favor him. This makes it harder for him to justify his spot on the team purely from a racing perspective. Team principal Christian Horner, who once firmly backed Ricciardo as the first choice to replace Perez, now seems more open to evaluating all possible options. This includes sticking with their current driver pool, rather than hiring outside talent. But while the team deliberates, the impact of sponsors on Ricciardo's future hangs heavily over every decision. While Ricciardo's track performance is crucial, there's a behind-the-scenes factor at play: his marketing influence. This is the very reason Marco and Horner openly admit Ricciardo remains a key figure. His appeal has allowed Racing Bulls to separate themselves from their Austrian parent team, bringing in talents like Peter Bayer and Laurent Mekies to reinforce their independence. The presence of Visa and Cash App as main sponsors has been vital in providing the resources needed to make these strategic moves. However, some F1 fans are beginning to criticize this sponsorship-driven dynamic, feeling that the sport is slowly shifting into a giant marketing machine rather than a pure motorsport competition. The dilemma now is crystal clear for Racing Bulls. They want to promote talent from within, giving a platform to drivers who have demonstrated raw speed. Yet, the tangled web of commercial interests makes this process far from straightforward. Throughout the Singapore race weekend, team members from both Red Bull and Racing Bulls appeared uncertain. Mekies, in particular, seemed caught off guard with his responses, giving the impression that Ricciardo might have driven his last F1 race. Yet, no official word has come forward regarding his status, leaving everyone guessing. A similar situation unfolded earlier at Spa, when Verstappen was allegedly promised a new teammate in Ricciardo. However, the influence of Perez's sponsors forced Red Bull to keep the Mexican driver for the remainder of 2024. The parallels between what happened back then and Ricciardo's current predicament at Racing Bulls are too striking to ignore. This pattern indicates that financial interests often overshadow purely racing decisions. Now, Racing Bulls face a challenging period ahead. Lawson finds himself in an increasingly tight spot. Despite proving his capabilities in a 5-race stint back in 2023, including a stellar P9 finish in Singapore, his future in Formula One looks bleak. Racing Bulls' ties with Visa and Cash App have made things far more complicated. Even Lawson's notable performances are not enough to guarantee him a spot when sponsorship agreements play such a significant role. But the decision at hand could impact more than just Lawson or Ricciardo. It could shape the entire future of Red Bull racing. Verstappen, the 3-time world champion, has recently raised questions about his long-term plans with the Austrian squad beyond 2026, hinting that his loyalty depends on the team's competitiveness. The uncertainty surrounding Verstappen's future is now an issue that Red Bull cannot afford to ignore. Dr. Helmut Marko has hinted at a possible exit, pointing out that Max would only stay with a team that gives him a shot at more victories. Adding to the tension, the ongoing troubles with the RB20 might compel Verstappen to consider invoking an exit clause in his contract earlier than expected. This looming crisis puts Red Bull in a highly vulnerable position. Who could possibly fill Verstappen's shoes if he leaves? It's no simple task. One potential strategy is to use the next year as a training ground. For Lawson, allowing him to develop into a driver capable of leading the team if a rebuild becomes necessary. However, Horner has also mentioned the possibility of recruiting an external talent, like George Russell, to tackle this problem head-on. But amidst all these discussions, the sponsor's influence is undeniably significant. Even if Ricciardo hasn't hit the performance targets, his marketing value with Visa and Cash App could ultimately sway the decision. This situation leads to one big question: could Ricciardo retain his seat not because of his racing prowess, but because of the commercial pull he brings? Racing is no longer just about speed and skill, it's also a game of business. Visa and Cash App have their say in the driver lineup, and Ricciardo's commercial magnetism makes him an appealing choice. As Racing Bulls ponder their next move, the struggle between racing passion and sponsorship obligations intensifies. It's not just about putting the best driver in the seat, it's also about meeting the expectations of those who fuel the team's finances. During the entire Singapore race weekend, uncertainty loomed. Both Red Bull and Racing Bulls personnel appeared cautious, avoiding clear answers. Laurent Mekies, in particular, seemed hesitant, almost suggesting that Ricciardo was indeed driving his last race. Yet, without official confirmation, fans and experts remain in suspense. Meanwhile, Lawson's predicament worsens. Despite his impressive performance in 2023, the reality is harsh. Without sponsors to back him, his dream of a long-term F1 career looks increasingly uncertain. Due to their contractual obligations to Visa and Cash App, Racing Bulls find it extremely difficult to make decisions based solely on talent. As the team walks this tightrope, the stakes continue to rise. Lawson's situation exposes the challenging reality for up-and-coming talents in F1. Despite delivering solid performances, his lack of commercial backing places him at a disadvantage. Racing Bulls, now caught between choosing raw talent or meeting sponsor expectations, face a difficult crossroads. This dilemma isn't just limited to Ricciardo and Lawson, it echoes across the paddock, reflecting the sport's evolving nature. Ricciardo's presence is more than just a potential race-winning opportunity, it's a financial lifeline for the team. While some argue that F1 should focus solely on racing capabilities, the reality is far more complex. For Racing Bulls, turning their back on Ricciardo could mean jeopardizing crucial sponsorships, putting them in a tough spot. On the other hand, Pushing Lawson aside risks losing out on nurturing an emerging talent, one who has already shown he can handle the pressure. Red Bull's management, especially Horner, must now weigh these factors carefully. While the desire to cultivate new talent is evident, the team can't ignore the weight of financial commitments. Meanwhile, Lawson watches from the sidelines, aware that his future depends on decisions influenced more by dollar signs than lap times. As Red Bull and Racing Bulls deliberate, the pressure is mounting. Ricciardo's commercial allure cannot be underestimated, but Lawson's raw talent screams for recognition. This situation illustrates a fundamental conflict in modern F1. Can a team truly prioritize skill over sponsorships? Racing Bulls now teeter on the edge of a decision that could shape their destiny for years to come. The future of the team is not just about who sits behind the wheel, but also about satisfying the financial backers keeping them in the race. Fans feel torn, longing for a sport where the fastest driver gets the seat, while realizing that in today's world, financial backing often holds the trump card. As discussions unfold behind closed doors, Racing Bulls must decide stick with Ricciardo and retain the vital support of Visa and Cash App, or take a chance on Lawson, driven by his promising performances. Ultimately, this choice extends beyond just Racing Bulls. It impacts the broader world of Formula One. Will Ricciardo stay purely because of the business angle, or can talent alone steer the team's direction? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And after you do, don't forget to check out the video on your screen for more racing insights. Well, that's all for today's deep dive into the drama surrounding Racing Bulls and Ricciardo's future. The world of F1 is full of surprises, and this situation is a perfect example of how business, talent, and passion can clash on the racetrack. But what do you think? Should Racing Bulls choose the commercial strength of Ricciardo or gamble on Lawson's raw talent? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive F1 insights. Don't forget to ring the bell icon so you never miss an update. There's a lot more to explore, so click on the video popping up on your screen now. Till next time, keep racing through life's twists and turns.